Okay.
Hi everyone, today we're talking about chapter 1 from WheeshtE by Kate Davies. I am so excited to introduce Linda Jennings from Color Storms Yarn and Rebecca, who is joining us internationally from Canada. So nice that you could join us.
It's good to see you. Rebecca is my daughter, but she's also a knitwear designer herself, and has many affiliations with Kate Davies, the author of the book we're discussing. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself, or how you first came across Kate and decided to follow her?
Yeah, I was trying to remember. I first heard about Kate when I was working at a yarn store in outside of Pittsburgh. So that would have been before she had even published her first book. One of my coworkers just said, "Oh, look at this amazing designer," and that was back when she was designing for Jameson and Smith. And I actually knit one of her hats on commission from someone I met through the store, not even knowing kind of who she was. And then eventually I just started following her blog, and Mom, you got me one of her books for Christmas. Not knowing that we could get it directly from her, ended up paying an exorbitant price for it from a reseller in the States, which was all very confusing. But at this point, I've collected almost all of her books, and I've read all of her blog and most of her books. And yeah, what else do you want to know about that?
What made you so impressed with her designs and her books that made you want to keep reading them?
Oh yeah, well, I think what I love so much about her work is that she does something that nobody else is doing in terms of aligning a group of patterns with a story, either historical or regional. Like she's an academic herself. She comes from an academic background. She was I believe a literature professor before she had her stroke, and so she brings a lot of scholarship to her writing. And so when she writes about, something like Shetland, like she's talking to archaeologists and she's talking to historians, and she really digs into it and writes really well about these places that she's inspired by to design. And I really love that, because then when you knit the design, it's much more than just knitting a design. You're inhabiting a story and you're joining into a story. And that kind of doing that sort of dual content where you're doing really solid writing with designing, that's like, I love that. That's like what I want to do with my life. I think that's really fabulous. And it's very difficult to publish. So she actually started her own publishing label and self-publishes everything, and makes these really high quality books so she can get them published, because traditional knitwear publishing is just not doing that sort of thing.
I like to say that I see the world through a knitter's lens. And so if I can look at any subject through knitting as the entry point, it just helps me to learn that subject, whether I'm interested in it or not. And just having that addition of knitting adds the interest piece to keep me interested in learning and moving forward. So I love going deep on a subject that I don't know that much about. And certainly I don't have this vast geography and cultural reference to the Shetland region, but I love that she brings that from a very solid historical perspective.
Yeah,
to me, like when you knit something, like having that opportunity to knit something, it's like you have something in your hands that you've made that connects you to that history and that story, and that allows you to be part of it, rather than just reading about it or seeing it from afar. And I think that's really powerful.
Yeah, I liked what you said about inhabiting a story while you're knitting. It reminds me of if there's a painting I love, the reason I love it is because I have the sense of wanting to go there, of wanting to jump into the painting. And she writes in that way that makes me want to jump in there and see the story with her. And then if you can knit a project alongside it, then you feel like you're going on the journey with her. So you're saying she was one of the first people to write like that?
That I'm aware of. I mean, certainly there's very few books published that, you know, contain that, because you tend to get, you know, traditionally we've had knitwear design has been inspired by yarn companies. Like yarn companies fund designers publishing, and the point of designs is to sell yarn. And so publishing a book and producing like a finished product that's not about the yarn itself, but is about a story, and it's, you know, narratively driven or inspired by the art itself, you know, that's not it's difficult to sell that. It's difficult to sell that to a publisher.
Okay. But she's doing really well now, right? She's
Oh yeah,
pretty
yeah.
big.
She's had a lot of success.
Let's see.
Well, chapter 1 is all about mending. Do you want to show us some of your projects that you've mended?
Oh, sure. Man. Okay. I've mended a lot of socks over the years, and tried to find a couple of not too grody ones, but this is one of my first pairs of socks that I made, and I ended up taking the time to go over a lot of it with duplicate stitch, because this was all worn almost all the way through. And I've found that when you're doing any kind of mending, you really have to go a good bit beyond where the actual wear is, and into the solid fabric, or else it just wears right around your mend. So yeah, this took a long time. I find that duplicate stitch darning takes a long time. But you know, these socks were worth it to me.
Can I ask you a question about that?
Yeah, sure.
Did you use yarn that was the same thickness as the original yarn, or was it thinner or thicker?
I think it was probably a little bit thicker. That wasn't intentional. It was just kind of what I had around.
Okay.
But I mean, it was still sock weight. It was still, you know, fingering weight, nylon blend.
It looks like it's held up well. How recent did you do that? How recently?
I did this a while ago, so this has held up pretty well, although the other sock is back in the mending basket. So I think it's found a new wear point, so that you can't really tell, but this is starting to wear through, like where my big toe would hit. And I do run into that a lot with darning socks, that I'll take the time to fix them and then they'll wear through again more quickly than I would like. So I've started to get into preventative darning and really trying to figure out, this is a little nasty, but these are hand spun socks that I made a couple years ago, and I didn't wear them for like a year because I wanted to make them more sturdy. So I actually went in and did a preventative darn on the back of these, and it's holding up really well actually, because I took all the time to spin the yarn. That's not really a good mending example.
That looks to me more like the darning versus the duplicate stitch.
Yes, it is. It's
nice.
I literally went into the purl bumps. Well, you can kind of see it here because this section I didn't go over it. Like I went into the purl bumps, like every other purl bump, and then I went back through and wove. So this is like a solid piece of fabric. Like it was really like stiff when I first made it. It softened up a lot, but yeah, so it's like a whole extra layer of fabric on top.
So is that the inside of the sock?
This is the inside, yeah.
Okay.
Nice.
Interesting.
And I did something similar. This is actually a mend on one of my favorite sweaters. It had worn pretty much all the way through on the elbows. This was the Brooklyn Tweed Loft yarn, which it's a woolen spun yarn, doesn't tend to last super long. Yeah, there was a full-on hole in the inside of this. This is the inside. The hole was like yay big. So I did a whole kind of elbow patch thing.
Oh, neat.
Nice.
So I did like the darn on top of it and then wove through it double thickness with some other it's the same. This is with the fingering weight version of this same yarn.
Okay.
So this is Shelter and this is Loft.
Neat. Yeah, it looks
Neat
like
matching on the other side.
the patch has a little bit of the red mixed in with it. It really actually looks very pretty on there.
Yeah, well, it's the same company, so the colors kind of go together. They're all very tweedy. And I do a lot of mending on jeans. This is not knitting, but some reason I wear out the right knee of all my jeans.
Oh my gosh. Is that
Just the
genetic?
right
I was just
side.
talking about that last week.
I think it must be because when I like kneel down, I'm always kneeling down on my right knee.
Yeah. Yeah.
I guess. They're always like this. They're always a little off center. So I got this mending technique from this book.
Mending Matters.
Yeah, Mending Matters. I followed her. This is by how do you say her name? Katrina Rodabaugh. I followed her on Instagram for a while and just loved her work. So this is pretty much all on mending jeans. So she does
Katrina,
like
maybe you could
Rodabaugh.
send her,
Yeah.
send that link to us or something, because that definitely goes right
Sure.
with the chapter. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, I'll shoot that over to you. But these are just really fun. They're
Is it
fun to
sewn?
do.
You sew the patch first and then hand stitch onto the jeans?
Yeah, so this is an external patch and this is an internal patch, but they're both, the very similar techniques that you would take a piece of just a piece of denim and you fold it in and iron it on the inside and pin it on, and then you just hand stitch with nice big stitches. You trim away any junk and then tack down the hole itself, and then you just kind of let the mend tell you kind of what it wants to do. Like this needed a lot of extra reinforcement in this fabric, I felt, so I added a lot more stitching. And this one I just wanted to get it on and done, so I didn't do a lot of extra. But it's just fun because it's very organic and boho kind of. I like the look of it. It's a pain when it happens to your nice jeans, but still fun.
I have a rib in one of my jeans and it's right across the thigh. It's a horizontal tear. And I'm like, I don't know if I should mend it or are these jeans done, but I'm really inspired now to try it. So thank you for sharing that.
You're welcome.
I love the way you don't hide the original hole. It becomes part of the design in the front. Whenever I've made many patches on jeans, but I've always hid the hole. So this whole idea of the mending becoming visible and sort of being part of telling the story of who you are as a person, how you always wear your jeans, and oh, look at that cool little hole. It's like becomes a part of your identity, part of the story of who you are, I think. And it's very bold, I think, to let that be visible.
Yeah, Katrina's work is really great in that, and just highlighting that shape and letting the shape of the wear kind of, she'll often echo the whole in her stitching, and it's just very organic, and I really like that.
Okay.
I have a friend who mends her son's jeans that way, and she always thinks they look like an island or a little country.
Oh,
Cute.
That is cute. I like the whole culture of mending as kind of a silent protest against cheap clothing and throwaway culture and that sort of thing. And your dad is really all about that, you know, not letting anything going to waste, repairing something and caring for it and fixing it and mending it instead of throwing it out. I want to keep going in that direction.
And have you
honestly,
noticed that men's clothing tends to last much better than women's
Mhm.
clothing?
oh, it's just made better in general.
Mhm.
Okay. Yeah,
That's-
I'm honestly, I haven't been a good mender in my previous 40 years as an adult. So I've only done it haphazardly, but especially with my knitting, I'm trying to learn more skills with that, and especially with sweaters, you know, that get worn, and you know, with the for 4 to 10 hours worth of work, you can save that sweater. And why not? You know, if it took you 40 to 100 hours to make it, why not?
Well, I think what's really powerful for me when I take the time to mend is it really makes me interrogate my clothes to be like, is this worth mending? Like, and often if it's not, that means that like this was poorly made, because there's nothing more frustrating than taking 5 or 10 hours to mend something and then wearing it 3 times and it gets another hole. And sometimes that's because I didn't do a great mending job and I need to like figure out more what I'm doing. But a lot of times it's because the original fabric was poor. It was just poorly made, or, you know, a lot of the yarn that you buy in the stores, like it's loosely spun because it looks good in the skein that way, but it doesn't wear well, you know, and like really, it really makes me want to invest a lot more in my fabric. And you know, do the work to figure out, okay, what is it going to take to spin a sock yarn that is going to last? Because fast fashion has created an entire infrastructure of clothes that you're not just expected to throw away, but that are built to fail, because they just expect, you know, expect you to go back and buy more clothes. So it kind of makes me run into that in a way that's not just ideological, but that's like, this is my time. This is hours of my time that I'm putting into this object. And so I better invest in clothes that are going to be worth mending when they get a hole.
Yeah, you actually wrote a blog about a series of socks that you made, and in which you evaluated all the yarn in those socks, right? You have an ongoing blog.
Oh yeah,
that
one
you-
January I went back and I kind of did a bunch of blog posts on socks that I'd made in the
Yeah,
past.
yeah.
Yeah.
So send us your link to your blog post,
Okay.
because I think you're a good writer too, like Kate Davies, and
Thank you.
you know, I'm sure more people would like to read about your work, learn more about the
Yeah,
yarn
right
you're
now
using.
I'm spinning a series of sock yarns. I've spun like 6 or 7 pairs worth, and I'm gonna knit them all up over the summer because I'm trying to figure out which sock yarns will last for me. Because I've got a lot of socks in the mending bin right now, and they've all been mended before. It's made me crazy.
So you're kind of doing an experiment to
Yes.
okay,
Mhm.
cool.
So good. Well, thank you for joining us this week. It was so nice to have a new perspective on mending.
Thank you, Rebecca, for joining us this week, and everyone for listening. Continue to allow for creative work and creative moments to happen, and watch them improve your life, even in little tiny increments. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.